Hello everybody. In this short video I'm going to talk about the ongoing developments of the µGFX-Studio. As most of you know, the current version of the studio hasn't received any updates in quite a few weeks. The reason for this is that we decided to restart from scratch. The current version is limited by quite a few design choices that are not easy to change. We decided to restart from scratch and re-implement the studio. So everything you will be seeing in this video is a completely new version of the µGFX-Studio. The main difference between the new version and the current version of the µGFX-Studio is that the new one uses the µGFX library natively. In the current version that you can download from our website, the widgets in the center area of the studio, they are not being rendered by the µGFX library itself. Instead, what we did is we tried to make them look like the native widgets. However, they are not. This is a certain problem because it's difficult to get the sizes right, especially if you use complex things like fonts. So in this new version we are using the library itself. So this area in the middle of the studio is now a real µGFX display. It is using a driver for the display and the touchscreen like you would on your target hardware. So if you take a push button and you can drop it into the scene, you see that this is now the built-in style of the push button of the µGFX library. It is no longer something that is inside of the studio that just looks like the button of the library. The same with all the other widgets. And you can, like before, you can position the widgets, you can resize them. And notice, for example, the current version of the studio, it uses an image for the widget. But the new one, because we are using the actual µGFX library in the background, we are able to do live rendering. So if you resize the keyboard, it actually re-renders it. What this allows us to do is we can change between the editor and the interactive mode up here in the toolbar. Right now we are in the editor mode and we are able to position the widgets and to resize them. However, we can change into the interactive mode at any time. Now we can no longer position or resize the widgets, but we can interact with them if we were clicking on a touchscreen. So we can now click the button, we can change the value of the slider, we can click on the keyboard, and so on. And we can change back to the editor mode at any moment, and now we can modify the display scene how we like. And we can move back into the interactive mode to check if everything is working as we like it. There are two other minor changes that don't really have an impact on the usability of the studio, but that have been on the to-do and the wish list for quite some time. The first one is that the widget editor, the property editor on the right hand side, is now a table-based. Previously we used dedicated widgets, dedicated checkboxes, combo boxes and so on to change the properties of the widget. Now everything is inside the table. We plan to add the ability to sort the table later on. The other change is the design model on the left hand side. Previously you only had a tree view for the currently active display page. Right now your entire design is represented in this tree model. So you don't only have multiple display pages where you can switch between them. I can place a widget here to show the switching. But you also have your resources, your colors, your widget styles, fonts, images and so on inside the model. As we are now using the µGFX library natively to render everything inside the studio, we can do some pretty fancy things. For example, I'd like to show you the new and vastly improved widget style editor. To create a new widget style, you right click on the widget styles node in the design model and select new widget style. The right hand side of the widget style editor is pretty familiar. It's almost the same as the one in the current version of the studio. What's new is the left hand side. You can now select any of the available widgets and use them to preview the new widget style that you are designing. Just as before, this area is in the interactive mode, so you can now click the widget, you can change the slider value and so on. I'm now going to show you how you can easily design a new widget style without saving and compiling and seeing whether it works or whether you need to modify it and so on. For example, we are now going to change the default color of the button. For this, we change the fill property of the enable state. As you can see, as soon as you change the color, the widget style is applied to the widget. This applies to any widget that you can select from the available widgets list. The by far fanciest new feature that we can present is the ability to create rendering functions inside of the studio. To create a new rendering functions, you right click on the rendering functions node in the design model and select new rendering functions. Just as with the widget style editor shown previously, you can select any of the available widgets to preview your new rendering function. You notice how it says compilation and rendering time 71 milliseconds. What we did is we added a built-in just-in-time compiler. So your rendering function, which you can design on the right-hand side of the editor, is compiled in real time and applied to the widget. Let's give it a try. Notice how it outputs the current compile warnings and errors at the bottom as I am typing. The reason for this is because it starts to compile once I stop typing for 400 milliseconds. Now we have entered a code that is compilable. Therefore, it has been compiled successfully, applied to the widget, and the widget has been rendered. We can now continue developing our custom rendering function. Once you're satisfied with your new rendering function, you can close the designer, select any widget inside your display scene, and assign the new widget rendering function. The same applies to the widget style that we created previously. As you can see, the new version of the µGFX-Studio is going to be a huge improvement over the current one. We are at the end of this short video and we hope that you liked it. If you have any questions, feedback, feature requests or anything else, we are happy to hear all about it over at the µGFX community forum.